The burned farm and the broken man. The wind howled across the empty plains of Terran 4, a lonely farming planet at the edge of the human colonies. Ash and dust still covered what used to be Eli Ward's farm. Once full of golden crops and laughter, now only black soil and twisted metal remained. He stood by the burned remains of his barn, his left arm gone long ago in a mining accident, and his right hand holding a small photo of his parents. People in the nearby settlement called him cursed. They said the fire that destroyed his land was a punishment from the alien gods. But Eli didn't believe in curses, he believed someone had done this on purpose. Every morning he would wake before sunrise, stare at the blackened horizon and whisper, "I will rebuild," but deep inside he didn't know how. No one hired a one-armed man for heavy work, and his savings had burned with the house. At night he sat alone by the remains of his tractor, listening to the wind through the hollow pipes. Sometimes he thought he heard voices like echoes from the day of the fire, a faint humming in the air. Then one night, as the moons rose over the field, his old communication beacon blinked for the first time in months. Eli walked to it slowly, brushing the dust away. The signal was weak but real. A message appeared in pale blue light. The voice was soft, melodic, and not human. "Greetings, Eli Ward," it said. "My name is Sarah Vinn. I wish to speak of a union." Eli frowned, thinking it was a cruel joke. No one had spoken to him kindly since the accident. But the message continued. "I know your pain, human, and I can help you rebuild your land, if you will accept me as your partner." He replayed the message again and again, unsure what to make of it, a proposal from an alien, something no sane human would agree to. But Eli had nothing left to lose. "If you can help me rebuild, Sarah Vinn," he said into the recorder, "then I accept." The message sent. The beacon flickered and then went dark. Eli sat there in silence, his heart beating faster than it had in years. 3 days later, a shuttle descended from the night sky, its hull reflecting the pale moons like liquid silver. The ground trembled as it landed near the burned barn, sending waves of dust across the ashes. From the glowing ramp stepped a tall figure dressed in deep blue armor with silver veins running across it. Her face was covered by a translucent veil, but her eyes shone like stars underwater. "I am Sarah Vinn," she said softly, her voice calm yet powerful. "And I have come to honor my promise." Eli stared, unsure if he should bow, speak, or run. She looked more like royalty than a traveler. "You are smaller than I expected," she said gently, her lips curving into something like a smile. "But you are human, and that is enough." Eli crossed his arm nervously. "I don't know what you expect from me," he said. "I expect honesty," she replied, "and the will to rebuild." The next morning, Sarah walked through the ruins, touching the blackened soil with her bare hands. Her touch left faint trails of blue light. The ground seemed to hum where her fingers passed. "This soil remembers," she whispered. "It can live again." Eli didn't understand her words, but something in her tone made him believe her. They began to clean the debris, her strange tools unfolding from her armor like living metal. Machines hummed and moved on their own, rebuilding walls in minutes that would take humans weeks. The villagers from nearby settlement came to watch, whispering rumors. "Eli Ward sold his soul to an alien witch," one said. "Maybe she will burn him next," another laughed. Eli ignored them, working beside Sarah as if they had been partners for years. She worked with grace, never tiring, and when he stumbled with his one arm, she silently supported him without a word. At night, when the wind cooled the fields, they sat near a fire she made from glowing stones. Eli asked, "Why me, Sarah? Why come to a broken man like me?" Her eyes flickered like hiding a memory. "Because you were kind when others mocked you," she said, "and because your land hides something that was once mine." Eli looked at her, confused. "Your land?" he repeated. "Yes," she said softly, "and the fire that destroyed it was not meant for you." He froze, staring at her glowing face in the dark. "What do you mean?" he asked slowly. Sarah looked toward the burned horizon. "Someone was looking for me, and they found you instead." Before Eli could speak, a distant shadow moved on the ridge beyond the field. Sarah's eyes glowed brighter, her voice turning cold. "They have found us again." Eli turned to look, but there was only darkness and wind. Still, he felt it in a presence watching them. Sarah stood, her armor shifting with a soft metallic sound. "You should rest," she said quietly. "Tomorrow, we begin rebuilding." Eli nodded slowly, but his eyes never left the ridge. He didn't know it yet. But his simple promise to marry an alien had just placed him in the middle of a war that stretched across the stars. And somewhere in the ashes of his burned farm, the secret of her fortune was waiting to be uncovered. The alien bride's secret the next morning rose quiet and cold. A silver mist covered the fields where Eli's burned crops once stood. Sarah was already awake, her hands glowing faintly as she traced strange patterns into the soil. Each mark shimmered with blue light before sinking into the ground like melting stars. Eli watched her from the doorway, still amazed by the way she moved, like a storm pretending to be gentle. By noon, half the barn stood again, rebuilt by machines that looked like insects of light. They crawled and shaped metal with songs instead of tools. Humming in perfect rhythm to Sarah's commands, Eli tried to help where he could, his single arm sore and covered in ash. But Sarah never let him feel weak. She handed him tasks he could manage and treated him as an equal. Still, her calm eyes hid something heavy, a silence that grew deeper each day that night. While the wind hissed against the new roof, Eli found her outside staring at the stars. "You never sleep," he said softly. "I dream while awake," she replied, not turning her head. He noticed the necklace around her neck glowing faintly under the moonlight. When the wind lifted her hair, he saw what hung from it. A small metallic crest shaped like two wings folding into a circle. He touched it without thinking. "That's beautiful," he said. Sarah stepped back quickly, covering it with her hand. "Don't," she whispered. Her voice trembling for the first time, Eli frowned. "I didn't mean harm." "I know," she said quietly. "But that symbol can get you killed." Before he could ask more, a faint beep echoed from the fields. Sarah's expression changed instantly. Fear mixed with anger. She ran toward the beacon she had planted near the soil. Its light flashing red, Eli followed, his heart pounding. "What's happening?" he asked. "They found me," she whispered. "They always find me." From the dark horizon, small drones appeared, black spheres slicing through the mist, their red eyes scanning the ground. Sarah raised her hand, and the soil itself seemed to rise, forming a glowing barrier around them. The drones fired bright pulses of light, but the barrier absorbed them with a low hum. Eli ducked behind a rock, his heart racing. "What are those things?" he shouted. "Hunters?" Sarah replied coldly. "Sent by the Zeran Empire." The fight lasted only a minute. With one motion, Sarah unleashed a shockwave that shattered the drones into dust. When silence returned, Eli stepped forward, staring at the glowing soil where the drones had fallen. The ground beneath shimmered like glass, revealing a buried metal structure, a long-forgotten vault. Sarah knelt beside it, her hand trembling. "It's still here," she whispered. "What is?" Eli asked. She looked up, her eyes filled with guilt. "The reason your farm burned." Eli's chest tightened. "You said someone was after you." "Yes," she said. "And they burned your land searching for what I hid here." She paused, her voice low. "I am not just Sarah Vin, traveler from Zera." She stood, her shadow long against the moonlight. "I am Sarah Vin of House Quran, heir to the fallen throne of Zera." Eli took a step back, shocked. "You're a princess," he said, almost laughing at the absurdity. "I was," she corrected softly, "until I stole something that didn't belong to my father." She looked toward the glowing vault. "War credits and enough to rebuild worlds," she continued. "I wanted peace, but my father wanted conquest." "So you ran," Eli said quietly. "Yes," she nodded. "I hid the stolen fortune beneath this soil, inside nanite banks that grow and breathe like living roots." Eli looked at his burned land, realization dawning. "The fire," he murmured. "It wasn't an accident." "No," she whispered. "They burned your world to erase the evidence." For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the distant wind howling through the half-built barn. Then Sarah turned to him, her eyes softer now. "I will understand if you want me gone," she said. Eli shook his head slowly. "You came to help me rebuild. And you're still here," he said. "That's more than anyone else ever did." She blinked, surprised by his calmness. "You'd still trust me after knowing this." Eli smiled faintly. "Trust is all I've got left." That night, as they stood under the twin moons, a faint hum echoed again from the vault. The soil pulsed with blue light, alive, responding to Sarah's presence. She whispered a word in her alien tongue, and the light dimmed like a heartbeat slowing. Eli watched silently, knowing his life was now bound to hers. In the distance, far beyond the hills, lights flickered in the sky. The arrival of ships too large to be drones. Sarah looked up and said quietly, "They will come for me again, Eli." He met her gaze and replied, "Then let them come. They'll find more than a broken farmer this time." The wind picked up, carrying the scent of burning ozone. Above them, the stars seemed to move, as if the heavens themselves were watching what was about to unfold. Eli didn't yet know that under his burned fields slept a fortune capable of changing the balance of power across the galaxy, and that his one simple act of kindness, saying yes to a stranger, had already set the course of history. The return of the enemy. The morning came with thunder that wasn't from the clouds. Eli was fixing the broken fence when he heard the deep roar of engines above the hills. The ground vibrated, animals scattered, and the sky turned dark as 3 black ships broke through the mist. They hovered low, their hulls marked with a red emblem shaped like a clawed sun, the symbol of the Xeran Empire. Sarah froze when she saw them. Her eyes darkened with memories she wished she could erase. "They found us sooner than I hoped," she whispered. Eli tightened his grip on the shovel in his one hand. "Let them land," he said, his voice low but steady. "They won't come to talk," she warned. "Then I won't talk either," he replied. The lead ship landed hard, crushing what was left of Eli's field. From it stepped soldiers in black armor, faces hidden behind reflective masks. One of them, taller than the rest, walked forward with a heavy staff that hummed like lightning. When he spoke, his voice carried through a translator, cold and sharp. "By order of the Xeran Empire, Sarah Vin of House Koran is to surrender herself for theft, treason, and war crimes." Eli stepped in front of her, dirt on his boots and sweat on his brow. "This is human territory," he said. "You've got no right here." The commander tilted his head. "You are protecting a fugitive of the crown." "Human?" "I'm protecting my wife," Eli said calmly. The alien paused as if the word confused him. "Your wife," he repeated. "Yes," Eli said. "And you'll leave now?" The commander laughed. A cold metallic sound, then without warning, he raised his staff and fired. The blast hit the ground beside Eli, throwing him back into the dirt. Sarah screamed, her eyes blazing white. She lifted her hands, and a wave of energy exploded from her palms. The shockwave tore through the first line of soldiers, scattering them like leaves in a storm. Eli pulled himself up, coughing through the smoke, his ears ringing. He grabbed the plasma tool from the ground, a farming cutter, and pointed it like a weapon. Sarah moved like wind and lightning, her armor shifting as it absorbed incoming shots. Each time she struck, the air burned blue and the earth cracked beneath her feet. Eli ducked behind a metal beam, firing his plasma cutter in bursts. He hit one of the soldiers, the armor melted, and the alien screamed before vanishing in a spark of light. For the first time in years, Eli felt alive, not broken, not helpless, but human in the rawest way. When the last ship pulled back, the commander shouted through the smoke. "You cannot hide forever, princess," his voice echoed. "Your stolen fortune will be ours again." Then the ships lifted. Leaving behind the smell of burnt ozone and ash, Sarah fell to her knees, breathing hard. The glow from her armor fading, Eli ran to her, kneeling beside her. "You're hurt," he said. She shook her head. "No, but you are," she said softly, her hand brushing his burned arm. His prosthetic had melted in the blast, metal fused to skin, but he didn't care. "They know about the vault," she whispered. Eli frowned. "Then we move it." She looked at him, surprised. "You'd help me again, even after this." "I'm already part of it," he said simply. "Might as well finish the job." That night, while the fires still glowed faintly in the distance, Sarah finally told him the whole truth. "The credits I stole," she said, staring into the flickering light, "were not just money. They were coded with something else." "What do you mean?" Eli asked. "They carry the genetic signature of my people. Their power, their essence," she said. "Whoever controls it can rebuild an army or rebuild life itself." Eli looked at her silently, the crackling fire reflecting in his one good eye. "So we're not just rebuilding a farm," he said slowly. "We're standing on something that could rebuild worlds." Sarah nodded, her voice a whisper. "And destroy them too." For a long while, neither spoke. Outside, the wind carried the distant hum of the retreating ships. Sarah turned to him and said softly, "You could leave, Eli. Go where they won't find you." He smiled faintly. "They already burned my world once. I'm not running again." She looked at him, a broken human with one arm and a stubborn heart. and for the first time since she fled her empire, she felt safe but far above them in orbit around the planet. The Zarin fleet gathered again inside the flagship. The commander removed his mask and whispered to the hologram of his empress. "He protects her, my queen, the human farmer." The hologram's eyes burned bright crimson. "Then burn his world again," she said coldly. As the stars shifted, preparing for another descent, the planet below slept unaware that war was already returning to its soil. And down in that quiet valley, Eli and Sarah stood together under the dim light of two moons. Neither of them knew it yet, but the battle for a burned farm was about to decide the fate of two civilizations. Hidden fortune. Beneath the soil, night settled heavy over the valley. The smell of burned metal and wet earth still clung to the air. Eli sat beside the half-rebuilt barn, his one arm wrapped in a rough bandage, watching the faint blue glow pulsing under the soil. Sarah knelt in the field, her hands deep in the dirt, whispering strange words that made the ground tremble softly. "What are you doing?" Eli asked quietly. "Listening," she replied, her voice calm but distant. "The soil remembers everything. The vault is still alive." Eli frowned. "Alive?" "Yes," she said. "The nanite banks respond to my bloodline. They were designed to protect what I hid, even from me." She pressed her glowing hand deeper, and the earth opened like breathing metal, revealing silver veins that pulsed with light. Eli stood, awe and fear mixing inside him. Those are your credits," he asked. "More than credits," Sarah said, her eyes reflecting the glow. "This is knowledge, energy, and creation woven together. Enough to feed 10 planets or destroy them if mishandled." She turned to him. "The Empire would kill 1,000 worlds to get this back." Eli shook his head slowly. "Then we make sure they don't." They spent the next few days working in secret. Eli built crude barriers using old farming tools and scraps of alien metal. Sarah used her strange devices to map the nanite network beneath the land. The ground pulsed with energy every time she spoke to it, like a living creature responding to its creator. At night they rested by the fire, their faces tired but their hearts steady. In those quiet hours, Sarah began to smile again, something rare and fragile, and Eli realized that he no longer felt broken. He felt needed. But peace never lasts long under the stars. On the 5th night while Sarah slept, Eli heard a faint mechanical hum beyond the barn. He limped out into the darkness, the cold wind brushing his face. Then he saw them, tiny red lights moving in the distance, scanning beams sweeping across the hills. He crouched low, his breath still. The drones were back, dozens this time. Flying in formation like metal vultures, he ran to Sarah, shaking her awake. "They found us again," he whispered. Her eyes opened, glowing bright even in the darkness. "Too soon," she muttered. "They must have tracked the energy pulse." Without hesitation, she grabbed a small cube from her armor and threw it into the soil. The cube melted instantly, spreading into hundreds of silver threads that formed a protective dome over the field. The drones hit it a second later, explosions lighting up the valley like fireworks. Eli covered his ears as the noise grew. The barrier shimmered, holding strong but dimming fast. Sarah's veins glowed faintly blue as she poured her energy into it, sweat running down her face. "Stop!" Eli shouted. "You're draining yourself." She smiled weakly. "Better me than the vault." When the final drone fell, silence returned. The soil still glowed, breathing in slow, steady waves. Eli helped Sarah to her feet, but she was trembling. Her body weakened from the effort. He guided her to the barn and sat her down gently. "I don't understand why you keep risking your life for this," he said. She looked up, her voice soft. "Because it's not just mine, it's everyone's. The energy here could end hunger, rebuild burned worlds, even heal the wounded." Eli nodded slowly. "Then we'll protect it no matter what." Days turned into weeks. Together they uncovered more of the buried vaults. Each one pulsed with ancient power, silver roots spreading like veins beneath the farm. Sarah called it the breath of worlds. A living treasure created long before her empire turned to war. And with every discovery, Eli's barren land began to change. Grass returned, glowing faintly under the night, and streams of clear water flowed again through the cracks. The farm was coming back to life. A miracle born from ash and loss, but miracles have a cost high above. The Zarin fleet detected the energy surge spreading across the valley. In the command chamber, the Empress stared at the glowing screen, her eyes cold and furious. "She's activating the soil banks," the officer reported. Then she's sealing her fate, the Empress said. Prepare the siege. On the ground, Sarah and Eli watched the night sky light up with the faint trails of incoming ships. The stars blinked like warning signals. Eli turned to her. They're coming again. Sarah nodded, her expression unreadable. This time, they will not leave. She touched the soil once more, and the ground responded, glowing brighter than ever. Eli's heart pounded, knowing that beneath their feet, an ancient power was awakening. As thunder rolled and the wind began to scream through the valley, Sarah whispered, "This place will be our stand." Eli looked at her, his one arm resting against the barn wall, and smiled faintly. "Then let's make it a good one," he said. Above them, alien warships descended through the clouds, their shadows swallowing the stars, and in the soil below, the hidden fortune stirred, a power waiting to decide whether it would save the world or burn it again. The siege of the farm, the night was no longer silent. The air itself trembled under the roar of engines above the clouds. Eli stood in the field with his face lit by the red glow of the coming storm. The sky cracked open, revealing the black ships of the Zarin fleet descending like a swarm of metal thunder. The Empire had arrived. Sarah stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the fire in the sky. "This time they are not sending hunters," she said quietly. "They are sending an army." Eli nodded slowly, the wind tugging at his torn sleeve. "Then they'll get a fight." She looked at him, her voice trembling. "You don't have to stay. This is not your war." He turned toward her, his face hard but calm. "You made it my war when you walked into my life." The first dropships landed beyond the ridge. Shaking the ground, columns of armored soldiers marched across the dark horizon. Their helmets gleamed under the burning sky, their weapons humming with energy. Eli and Sarah had no army, no backup, only the tools of a farmer and the heart of two souls who refused to bow. Eli dragged the plasma generator into place, connecting it with the alien cables Sarah had rebuilt. He turned the switch, and the old farm machines came alive with a mechanical roar. Broken tractors, irrigation bots, and harvest drones all glowed with alien blue light, now reborn as weapons. Sarah smiled faintly. "You turned your farm into a fortress." He grinned. Old habits die hard. The first attack came like rain made of fire. Energy blasts hit the fields, exploding against the soil shield Sarah had woven. Each blast shook the valley, sending waves of heat across the land. Eli manned the mounted plasma cannon, his one arm steady as he aimed. The cannon kicked with every shot. Tearing through the enemy line, Sarah stood beside him, summoning energy walls that bent light and sound, shielding them both. "Why do you fight so hard?" she shouted over the explosions. "Because they already took everything once," he said. "They won't again." His words carried across the wind, strong and human and unbroken. The alien army pushed forward, but every meter cost them blood and metal. Hours passed like minutes, the battle turning the valley into a storm of light. Eli's arm burned, the prosthetic cracked, sparks flying with every recoil. Still, he didn't stop. Sarah's armor flickered from exhaustion. Her power draining fast, she raised her hands toward the sky, screaming a single word in her alien tongue. The ground responded, the hidden vaults awakening all at once. Blue light burst from the soil, forming walls of living crystal around the farm. The attackers stopped, staring as the ground itself began to move. From beneath the earth rose massive silver roots, nanite vines twisting and growing, wrapping around the ships and dragging them down. The soldiers panicked, firing wildly, their weapons useless against living metal. Eli watched in awe. "Sarah, what is this?" "The breath of worlds," she whispered. "It's protecting us, but the power came with a cost." Her body trembled, her energy fading, blood glowing faintly beneath her skin. Eli dropped his weapon and rushed to her, catching her before she fell. "Stop. You'll kill yourself," he said. She smiled weakly. "Then let me die for something worth saving." He shook his head. "No, not again, not after all this." He carried her to the core field, where the main vault pulsed like a giant heart beneath the soil. The battle still raged beyond the barrier, explosions lighting up the valley like a broken sunrise. Eli placed his hand on the glowing surface, feeling warmth spread through his arm. The nanites reacted to his touch, merging with the circuitry in his prosthetic. A surge of energy raced through his body. His arm came alive, metal turning to living light. Sarah gasped. "Eli, what did you do?" He looked at his new glowing arm. "Just helping with the harvest," he said. Then he turned toward the enemy line and raised the cannon again. With his new strength, he fired a burst so powerful it tore through the lead ship's hull. The explosion lit up the night, the shockwave throwing back every soldier still standing. When the smoke cleared, silence returned. The Zarin army lay scattered, their ships burning like dying stars across the valley. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "You saved us," Eli shook his head. "No. We saved the farm." The first rays of dawn touched the horizon. The soil glowed softly, healing itself, and the air smelled of rain, not smoke. The hidden fortune beneath the ground had awakened fully now. The nanites spread quietly, turning the scorched earth into living green once more. Sarah leaned on Eli's shoulder, whispering, "They'll return, you know." He nodded. "Then they'll find this place ready." As the sun rose over the valley, the world looked new. A burned farm reborn through courage, love, and something far greater than both above them. The last alien ship limped back into the clouds, carrying the message that the human who lost an arm had won a war, and far beneath their feet the soil hummed quietly, holding the promise of a new beginning. The choice of the princess. The smoke from battle still hung over the valley, ash mixed with silver dust drifting like quiet ghosts over the glowing soil. Eli stood among the ruins, his new arm still pulsing with faint blue light. The machines of the farm hummed softly, healing the land in slow, steady rhythm. He looked at Sarah, who sat beneath the half-burned tree, her armor cracked, her eyes far away. For the first time since the war began, there was silence, no engines in the sky, no shouts, only the sound of the earth breathing again. Sarah's head tilted as her communicator blinked. A faint hologram appeared, a cold face framed by a crown of red light. "Daughter," the voice said, smooth and sharp like a blade. "You have cost me a fleet." Sarah's breath caught. "Mother," she whispered. The Empress of Zara looked down through the transmission with eyes like burning coals. "You disgrace your house, you marry a human farmer, and you dare to use our sacred vaults." Eli stood beside Sarah, his jaw tight. "Your fleet burned my home. Your soldiers bled on my land, so maybe it's time someone stood up to your empire." The hologram turned toward him. "You think a human can defy the throne?" "I'm not defying," Eli said calmly. "I'm defending," the Empress laughed, a cruel, echoing sound that made the air tremble. "Very well," she said. "Sarah, return to me now and I will pardon you. The human will live." "Your honor will be restored." Sarah looked up, the offer cutting through her like glass. "If I refuse," she asked quietly. "Then your planet will burn," her mother said, as it should have long ago. The transmission ended, leaving only the faint hum of the air and the distant cry of wind over the hills. Eli turned to her. "You don't have to face her alone." Sarah shook her head. "This isn't your fight." He stepped closer, his glowing arm reaching out. "Everything that touches this land is my fight now." She looked at him, the man who had nothing yet gave everything, and something deep inside her broke free. She smiled through tears. "Then if I fall beside you." She stood and walked to the center of the field where the soil core glowed like a buried star. Her voice rang out soft but filled with power. "This is my home now, not Zara, not the Empire.
Here is where I choose my future." She pressed her hands into the soil,
whispering ancient words that only the nanites understood. The ground pulsed bright, light flowing up her arms and into the sky. It was not a weapon this time, but a beacon, a message sent across the stars in the orbit above. The Zarin fleet trembled as the signal reached them. "Transmission from Princess Sarah," a soldier shouted. It's spreading through every channel. Her voice filled the ships, calm and strong. "To those who serve the Empress," she said, "know that her war ends here. The power of the vaults will no longer serve blood, but life." The crew listened, frozen, some lowering their weapons, others staring at the blue light now forming around their ships. On the ground, Eli watched in awe as the soil responded to her call. The once burned fields bloomed, green light bursting from the dirt like dawn breaking through night. Sarah's body shimmered, her armor dissolving into particles of silver that melted into the air. She fell to her knees, weak but smiling. "It's done," she whispered. Eli ran to her side, catching her as she leaned against him. "What did you do?" he asked softly. "I freed them," she said. "I freed us." Above them, the fleet began to retreat, one ship after another turning away from the planet. The Empress's voice echoed one last time across the comms. Filled with fury and pain, "You have betrayed your blood. Sarah. Sarah looked at the sky and whispered, I have honored it. The beacon dimmed. The valley quiet again. Eli looked down at her. You just made yourself the most wanted woman in the galaxy. She smiled weakly. Then it's a good thing I married the stubbornest man in it. He laughed softly, the first real laugh in months. The wind carried their voices across the green valley, once dead, now reborn. The wind carried their voices across the green valley, once dead, now reborn. That night, as they sat under the stars, Sarah placed her hand over his glowing arm. The vault will sleep now, she said. Its energy will grow the world again. Eli nodded. And if they come back, she smiled. Then we remind them why they lost. The stars shone brighter than ever before. The soil beneath them hummed like a living heart. And on that quiet world at the edge of the galaxy, an alien princess and a broken human farmer became the symbol of something far greater than rebellion. Hope. The rebirth of hope. The war was over, but the world was still healing. Weeks had passed since the battle, and the valley no longer smelled of smoke. It smelled of rain, of grass, of life returning. Where once black ash covered the ground, now fields of silver-green crops shimmered beneath the morning sun. The burned farm had become something new, a place that breathed, a living reminder that even ruin could grow again. Eli stood at the edge of the field, the wind tugging at his coat. His right arm, once metal, now pulsed faintly with living light, part human, part alien, part miracle. He flexed his fingers, watching them glow softly in rhythm with the hum of the land. Behind him, Sarah walked slowly, her steps light, her hair glimmering with faint blue sparks that never fully left her since the awakening. She smiled when she saw him staring at the horizon. Still waiting for another fleet, she teased gently. He smiled back. No, just watching things grow. They had rebuilt everything together. The barn now stood stronger than ever, its frame a blend of wood and alien alloy. The old windmill hummed with new energy drawn from the soil's hidden heart. Even the nearby villagers, once fearful of aliens, now came to trade. To learn and to help, children ran across the glowing fields, chasing mechanical fireflies that Sarah had created from the leftover nanites. It was peace, fragile, beautiful and hard-earned. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Sarah sat on the fence beside Eli. You could have left, she said softly. You could have walked away when all this began. Eli chuckled. And missed my chance to rebuild the galaxy's strangest farm? She laughed quietly, the sound gentle and full of warmth. You rebuilt more than a farm, she whispered. You rebuilt me. He looked at her, the woman who had fallen from the stars and changed his entire world. Maybe we rebuilt each other, he said. Maybe that's what we're supposed to do. That night, as stars filled the sky, something strange happened. The soil began to glow again, softly this time, not in warning but in joy. From the center of the field, new shoots of crystal green plants rose, glowing faintly like stars caught in roots. Sarah placed her palm against the ground, smiling. The vault is learning. It's growing life from memory. Eli knelt beside her, watching the small plants sway under the cool wind. What will it grow next, he asked. Whatever the world needs most, she said. The soil listens now. The following morning, travelers from nearby colonies began arriving. Word had spread across the systems of a human farmer and an alien princess who turned ashes into life. They called it the Field of Two Suns because at dusk, the soil reflected the light of the twin stars like a mirror of hope. Eli didn't like being called a hero, but Sarah often smiled when people bowed to her, not out of pride, but because she saw peace where there used to be fear. One afternoon, a young alien boy ran to Eli holding a sprout that glowed softly in his hands. Is it true this plant came from your land, he asked. His eyes wide, Eli knelt and nodded. It came from all of us, from every hand that refused to give up. The boy grinned, and Sarah watched from afar, her heart full. This was why she had stolen the fortune, why she had fled the empire, not for power, but for this moment. As the days passed, the valley became more than a farm. It became a sanctuary for both humans and aliens, a place where stories began again. Ships came from far worlds carrying seeds, hopes and broken hearts, and the soil accepted them all, healing everything it touched. One evening, as the sun sank low, Eli and Sarah stood together watching the horizon. The wind brushed against them, warm and gentle. Carrying the scent of new life, Eli spoke softly. Do you ever miss your home? Sarah looked up at the stars, then at him. I'm standing in it, she said. He smiled, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Then this time, he whispered, let's make sure it never burns again. The stars brightened above them, their light reflecting on the glowing fields below. From the distance, the hum of life spread like a song, the sound of machines, soil and hearts working together. The galaxy had forgotten the name of the war, but it would never forget the story of the one-armed human and the alien bride who turned destruction into creation. And as the night settled over Terran 4, the fields glowed like a sea of stars, every grain of soil carrying a whisper. That hope once planted never truly dies.